Never betray a Scorpio, unless you're ready to live with it forever. You didn't just lie. You didn't just cheat. You didn't just disappear. You betrayed a Scorpio, and that has consequences beyond what you can imagine. There are zodiac signs you can fool once or twice. There are signs who may forgive or forget, but Scorpio is not one of them. They don't just experience betrayal, they become transformed by it. To betray a Scorpio is not to just end a relationship. It's to ignite a silent war between your energy and theirs, between your shadow and their awakening. It's the moment you unintentionally called down a storm you cannot control, not from their hands, but from the universe itself. From karma. This video isn't here to scare you. It's here to awaken you, to help you understand why betraying a Scorpio is not just foolish, it's unforgettable for both of you. This is not just astrology. This is spiritual survival. So, welcome to the path to Buddhist wisdom. Over the next 14 reasons, you will learn the deeper truth behind Scorpio's power. And perhaps, you will finally understand why those who lose a Scorpio's trust rarely, if ever, get it back. Let's begin. Reason 1. They remember everything with emotional precision. You may forget the moment you broke their trust, but they won't. Not today, not ever. And it's not out of vengeance, it's out of emotional memory. Why Scorpio's memory is a spiritual weapon. Scorpio isn't simply about strength or mystery. At its core, Scorpio is the emotional historian of the zodiac. They don't just remember dates or facts, they remember how moments felt. The day you left without calling, the way your voice cracked when you lied, the silence you gave instead of the support you promised. Every interaction becomes a file in their emotional archive. And once it's stored, it's never deleted. This isn't about obsession. It's about self-protection. It's about emotional intelligence so heightened that it becomes intuitive memory. Story: the forgotten birthday that ended a friendship. Let's talk about Livia, a Scorpio woman who had a best friend for over a decade. They did everything together, traveled, built businesses, even raised kids side by side. But on Livia's 35th birthday, that friend didn't even send a text. Why? Because she had a new social circle and forgot. Livia never confronted her. She smiled, nodded, and said, "It's okay." But inside, she archived it. Years later, the same friend, after a breakup and a broken career, reached out. Her message? "You were always the most loyal one. I miss you." Livia replied, "I don't miss the version of me that trusted you." Scorpio doesn't yell. They remember and evolve. Beneath the silence, the power of emotional recall. Have you ever sat across a Scorpio after you've wronged them? Notice how they're quiet. Not passive, not angry, just still. That stillness? That's memory scanning every moment you shared. Every smile they now question. Every secret they gave that you might have used. To Scorpio, betrayal is a sacred rupture. You didn't just hurt their ego, you disrupted their soul contract. That's why they remember. Not to punish you, but to never forget who they became after you. Spiritual lens, karma, and emotional imprint. In Buddhism, we speak of storehouse consciousness, the idea that every action, every thought, every emotion leaves a trace in the mind stream. Scorpio doesn't just remember for themselves. They remember because their spirit is wired to transform pain into power. Every emotional wound becomes a teacher. Every betrayal becomes a spiritual initiation. So while you move on thinking it meant nothing, they're rebuilding their entire emotional foundation without you. Psychological insight, emotional photographic memory. Modern psychology calls this emotional flashbulb memory, where traumatic or deeply personal moments are encoded with razor-sharp clarity. Scorpios are masters of this. They remember what you said, how you said it, and what your silence screamed. And unlike other signs, they don't bring it up to fight. They bring it up to awaken. Because the biggest revenge Scorpio has is growth. Example, the corporate betrayal. Meet Damien, a Scorpio CEO. His co-founder misused company funds and tried to sell internal data. Damien didn't call a lawyer immediately. He watched. He took notes. He documented every single action, every lie. 6 months later, Damien executed a buyout. Clean, quiet, brutal. The company doubled revenue under his name alone. When his ex-co-founder messaged him months later with "Can we talk?" Damien sent 3 words. "I remember everything." He wasn't angry. He was free. Why this makes Scorpio so dangerous to betray? Because once they've been betrayed, They no longer need to prove anything. They will stop explaining their silence. They become the version of themselves you never deserved to meet. But they'll always remember the potential, the bond, the trust that once existed. And that is what makes them unforgettable and dangerous. Final reflection: karma never forgets. And neither do they. Scorpio remembers, not to hurt you, but to never let themselves be hurt the same way twice. So if you ever find yourself tempted to lie, manipulate, cheat, or use a Scorpio, just know this. Even if they say nothing, even if they walk away without a word, you have etched your actions into the stone of their soul, and they will never look at you the same again. Because for a Scorpio, memory isn't a weakness. It's a weapon. Reason 2. Betrayal fuels their transformation. The fire you started didn't destroy them. It transformed them. From memory to metamorphosis, the Scorpio evolution. In part 1, we explored how Scorpio remembers, not out of vengeance, but with emotional precision, archiving every shift, every silence, every betrayal. But memory alone doesn't define Scorpio. It's what happens after the betrayal that truly sets them apart. This brings us to reason number 2, you should never betray a Scorpio. Collision reason 2, betrayal fuels their transformation. What you meant to break only became their foundation. Scorpio's sacred cycle: death, rebirth, and ascension. Scorpio is the only zodiac sign with 3 evolutionary symbols. The scorpion, defensive, reactive, emotionally wounded. The eagle, wise, clear-eyed, soaring above drama. The phoenix, burned by pain, reborn in divine fire. When you betray a Scorpio, you don't destroy them. You initiate their transformation. You set off a chain reaction that forces them to die to who they were and resurrect into someone stronger, smarter, and completely untouchable. True story: the woman who rose from ashes. Meet Isla, a Scorpio teacher in New York. She loved deeply, trusted fully. She even supported her partner's dreams while putting hers on hold. One day, she discovered he had been having an affair with one of her students. She didn't confront him. She didn't scream. She left, vanished. For 6 months, no one heard from her. When she re-emerged, Isla had moved to a new state, cut her long hair, symbolic for Scorpio, opened a center for women who had been betrayed. She called it Born from Fire. That's Scorpio. They don't beg, they build. Emotional alchemy, from pain to power. Psychologists refer to this as post-traumatic growth, PTG, a rare psychological response where trauma becomes fuel for transformation. Scorpios are wired for PTG. They don't suppress emotions. They descend into them. They sit in the fire of betrayal until it burns away everything false, even if that includes you. They rise without needing revenge. Their existence becomes the response. The Phoenix principle: don't burn what can be reborn. You thought you burned their trust? Good job. It's gone. But so is your access to the old version of them, the soft, trusting, vulnerable soul who believed in you. Now, there's someone new, someone sharper, someone who won't let you close again. And the irony? They thank you for the pain, because without it, they would have never awakened. Business betrayal: the rise of Scorpio resilience. Kai was a Scorpio tech entrepreneur. He co-founded a startup with a longtime friend who secretly funneled investors away. Kai didn't expose him. He disappeared for 1 year. When he came back, he'd launched a bigger company, tripled the revenue, rebranded under Scorpio Systems. The betrayal? A blessing in disguise. When asked about it, Kai said, "He handed me the flame. I just used it to light my rebirth." Buddhist insight: suffering is a catalyst. Buddhism teaches that pain is not the end, it's a teacher. No mud, no lotus. For Scorpio, betrayal is the sacred mud. They don't avoid it. They submerge in it until they rise lotus-like, powerful, purified, awakened. Spiritual sovereignty: why they no longer need you. After transformation, Scorpio doesn't hate you. They just outgrow the version of themselves that loved you. And that version is never coming back. Their silence: not a punishment, a graduation. You're not in the next chapter because you don't belong in their new story. Bridging from part 1. In part 1, Scorpio remembered the betrayal. In part 2, they used that memory to ignite their rebirth. You weren't just a scar, you were the spark. And that's why betraying a Scorpio never works in your favor. Because even if they forgive, they've already evolved. And you're left behind, in a chapter they've closed. Direct hit. Why this is reason number 2 to never betray a Scorpio. When you betray a Scorpio, you create a version of them who never needs you again. They will mourn in silence, vanish without closure, return unrecognizable. You'll look for them in future lovers, in past memories. But they won't look for you. They're too busy being reborn. Person in lotus position, wisdom takeaway. When a Scorpio transforms, they leave behind not just pain, but everyone who gave it to them. So before you betray one, ask yourself, are you ready to become a ghost in their story? Because when they rise, you'll still be trying to understand what happened. And the truth is, they don't need to explain it. Reason 3. Their revenge is surgical, not emotional. They don't explode. They calculate. And when they cut you off, it's clean and forever. From transformation to precision, the next phase in Scorpio's evolution. In part 1, we revealed how Scorpio remembers, permanently and precisely. In part 2, you watch them transform, turning pain into rebirth. But now, in part 3, we enter their final form. Not the broken heart, not the ashes of betrayal, but the surgeon with the scalpel, precise, unemotional, and unstoppable. This is where Scorpio's legendary revenge takes shape. And this is reason number 3 why you should never betray a Scorpio. Syringe reason 3. Their revenge is surgical, not emotional. They don't scream. They strategize. Why Scorpio doesn't react? They respond. You might expect fireworks. You might expect a dramatic confrontation, crying, yelling, or blocking you on social media. But Scorpio doesn't do theatrics. Because Scorpio knows something far more terrifying. Silence cuts deeper than sound. And planning hurts more than punching. They don't lash out in a moment of rage. They wait, observe, analyze. And when the time is right, they strike. Not to hurt you emotionally, but to remove you with clinical detachment. True story, the silent exit. There was a man named Ellis. Scorpio sun, Capricorn moon, a natural strategist. His partner had been unfaithful for months, hiding it under fake meetings and sudden business trips. Ellis knew the whole time. He didn't confront her. He smiled, cooked dinner, slept beside her as usual, until one morning, she woke up, and he was gone. Apartment emptied, bank accounts transferred, lease terminated, her secrets exposed, but not publicly, only to the one person who mattered, her father. There were no threats, no scenes, just one message. I loved you, but I love truth more. That's Scorpio, the art of psychological precision. Scorpio's revenge is never blind. It's calculated. It's often delayed. But when it comes, it's accurate, cold, untraceable. They don't want you to suffer randomly. They want you to feel exactly what they felt, but in a way that's even more isolating. Because what hurts more than being yelled at? Being erased. Astrology insight. Mars plus Pluto equals tactical fire. Scorpio is ruled by 2 planets. Mars, the planet of action, war, and strategy. Pluto, the planet of power, death, and psychological warfare. Together, they make Scorpio the special ops commander of the zodiac. They don't fight messy battles. They fight spiritual wars with internal weapons and long-term vision. While others react emotionally, Scorpio studies your moves like a chessboard. And once they see the checkmate, they don't hesitate. Example from business, the quiet removal. Jasmine, a Scorpio executive, found out her deputy was stealing client data. She didn't fire him. She gave him a raise. She let him think he was winning, all while building a file of irrefutable evidence. When she fired him 6 months later, it was during a shareholder meeting. He lost his job, reputation, and legal standing in under 5 minutes. She simply said, "You dug the grave. I just decided when to bury the truth." Scorpio revenge is never about ego. It's about justice, delivered with elegance. Spiritual perspective, when revenge is dharma. You might think, revenge isn't spiritual. But Scorpio doesn't see it that way. In the teachings of karma, every action must return to its source. And Scorpio often becomes the instrument of that karmic return. They don't chase retribution. But if the universe puts the moment in their path, they deliver the lesson with frightening clarity. Because Scorpio sees revenge not as punishment, but as correction, a reset, a balancing, a mirror. How this connects to part 2. In part 2, Scorpio transforms. In part 3, they test that transformation by facing you again, not with weakness, but with weaponized clarity. The phoenix doesn't burn others. But if you walk into the fire, don't expect mercy. Why it hurts more when Scorpio strikes? Because you won't see it coming. You'll think they forgot. You'll think they moved on. And then, one day, you'll lose access. Not because they want to destroy you, but because they want you to see who you are through their absence. Final reflection, reason 3, revenge as restoration. Scorpio doesn't destroy what betrayed them. They simply remove it with precision. So don't fear their rage. Fear their patience. Fear their planning. Fear the day they stop responding and start recalculating. Because by the time you realize what's happened, you're already gone. Person in lotus position, wisdom takeaway. Real revenge isn't anger. It's elevation. And Scorpio, they rise. Not to tower over you, but to prove they no longer exist in the same dimension as your betrayal. Fire Part 4. Reason 4. They read between every line. You spoke with a smile, but they heard the silence behind it. From precision to perception, the psychic radar of Scorpio. In Part 1, Scorpio remembered. In Part 2, they transformed. In Part 3, they struck, not with fire, but with flawless precision. Now in Part 4, we explore the why behind it all. How did they know? Why couldn't you hide the betrayal? Why did they catch what others missed? Because Scorpio doesn't just listen. They decode. They read what you're not saying. They hear what you hide behind your tone. They feel what you're afraid to admit, even to yourself. Man Detective Reason 4. They read between every line. To lie to a Scorpio is to confess without realizing. Not just empathy, emotional X-ray vision. While others rely on logic and facts, Scorpio operates on something deeper. Energetic data. They don't just hear your words. They hear the shift in your breathing, the micro tremble in your voice, the milliseconds of hesitation before your answers. To Scorpio, truth is energetically loud, even when spoken in whispers. And lies? They glow like red ink on white paper. Real story. The missing I love you. Nadia, a Scorpio nurse from London, was dating a man who said all the right things. He checked every box, showed up on time, complimented her constantly. But one night, he said, "I love you," and smiled. Something in her stomach flipped. She didn't know why. The words were perfect. The setting was romantic. But something didn't match. 3 weeks later, she found the messages to another woman, dated before that night. She told me, "He didn't lie with words. He lied with energy. My body caught it before my mind did." Scorpio's intuition isn't just strong. It's cellular. Psychological perspective, microexpression decoding. Studies in behavioral psychology show that certain people have heightened abilities to detect microexpressions, fleeting, involuntary facial cues that reveal true emotion. Scorpio ranks high in this. They don't need you to admit the truth. They see it flash across your eyes before your brain finishes the lie. They notice eye contact that's slightly too forced, laughter that dies a second too soon, reassurance that sounds rehearsed. They catalog these moments quietly, effortlessly, and accurately. Astrological reasoning, Pluto and the unseen. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, the planet of the hidden, the underground, the subconscious. That means they're not interested in surface stories. They want what's buried. And when they speak less, it's not because they know nothing. It's because they know more than you think and are waiting to see how deep your lie goes. Story: The Meeting Room Revelation. Devin, a Scorpio manager, once sat through a presentation by a junior employee proposing a new strategy. It was stolen, word for word from a confidential deck Devin had created years ago. He didn't call it out. Not right away. Instead, he asked one question. "Can you explain the logic behind Slide 7's risk metrics?" The employee stammered, fumbled, collapsed. Devin didn't raise his voice. He simply said, "When you lie in my presence, I prefer to let you finish so you understand what it feels like to be seen completely." How this connects to Part 3. In Part 3, we saw the Scorpio revenge. Clean, quiet, surgical. But what fuels that precision? This perceptual sensitivity, this emotional radar, this terrifying ability to spot the betrayal before it even happens. By the time you lie, they already know. They're just letting you dig the grave deeper. Why you should never try to outsmart a Scorpio. Because they read energy, track patterns, hear silence, watch everything, especially when you think they're not watching. They don't ask follow-up questions because they're confused. They're testing the consistency of your deception. And when you fail the test, they don't flinch. They simply file you under no longer safe. Final reflection, reason 4. Intuition is their superpower. You can say anything, but they already heard what you meant. Scorpio doesn't need proof. They need peace. And once your presence threatens that peace, they're gone, not in anger, but in clarity. So be careful what you say, because to a Scorpio, the space between your words is louder than your voice. Person in lotus position, wisdom takeaway. The eyes may miss the lie, but the soul never does. Scorpio sees with the soul, and when their soul senses the break, even if you haven't acted on it yet, they've already started preparing for your exit. They won't confront. They won't beg. They'll just know. And from there, your time in their world begins to fade. Reason 5. Their silence speaks louder than words. When a Scorpio stops talking, start listening. From reading between the lines to saying nothing at all. In part 4, we saw how Scorpio reads between every line, noticing what others miss, intuitively sensing what's left unsaid. But what happens when they go silent? This brings us to reason number 5 why you should never betray a Scorpio. Candle reason 5. Their silence speaks louder than words. Silence, for a Scorpio, is not the absence of feeling. It's the overflow of truth. What Scorpio silence really means. When most people go silent, it's avoidance. When Scorpio goes silent, it's strategy, protection, or farewell. They aren't stonewalling. They are processing. They're deciding what to cut, what to keep, and most importantly, whether you are still worthy of their voice. To Scorpio, words are sacred. They don't waste them on those who've already shown they don't deserve the truth. Real story, the dinner table goodbye. Leah, a Scorpio writer, sat across from her husband at dinner. She had discovered he had been lying for months about financial issues, draining their joint savings, all while pretending everything was fine. She didn't cry. She didn't accuse him. She said, "Pass the salt." And that was it. That night, she packed, left in silence. He begged. He yelled. He texted pages of apologies. She never responded. She told me later, "If I speak to him, I give him power. My silence is my closure." That's Scorpio. Psychological insight. Why silence hurts more. When someone yells, we hear anger. When someone sobs, we hear pain. But silence creates a void. And the human mind fills voids with fear, doubt, guilt, and shame. Scorpio knows this. That's why, when you hurt them, they don't chase you down with explanations. They just go quiet and let your own conscience do the screaming. Because in that void, you start to ask, did they know? Are they planning something? Will they ever speak to me again? Scorpio doesn't answer. And that's what makes the silence unbearable. Spiritual layer, the voice of inner stillness. In Buddhist tradition, silence is often the threshold to enlightenment. In silence, the ego dissolves and truth emerges. For Scorpio, silence isn't passive. It's spiritual alchemy. They retreat not to escape, but to cleanse, to see clearly, and to decide who stays in their future. Astrological meaning. Fixed water equals still but deep. Scorpio is a fixed water sign. Think of a still lake. Calm on the surface, but beneath? Pressure, power, depth, movement. When Scorpio goes silent, it means a boundary has been crossed. A decision is being made. A soul contract may be dissolving. And if you wait too long in that silence, you won't get a reply. You'll get replaced. Corporate example, the email that never came. Marcus, a Scorpio department head, had an assistant who made a critical mistake, then blamed another teammate. Marcus found out, but he didn't mention it. He just removed her from projects, then from meetings, then from payroll. She kept emailing, asking what happened. He never responded. When asked why, he simply said, "Some lessons require silence." Connection to part 4. In part 4, Scorpio heard what you didn't say. In part 5, they use silence to say what you need to hear the most. They don't always need to confront you. They just let their absence echo through your actions. And it echoes loudly. Why their silence is more powerful than any confrontation. Because when they stop talking, they're done explaining. They're done fixing. They're done hoping. Scorpio's silence is closure. Not for them, for you. And by the time you realize it, you've already been erased from their life story. Final reflection, reason 5, the wisdom of stillness. Silence is the last thing they give, when everything else has already been taken. So when a Scorpio goes quiet, don't assume they're fine. Assume they've already made peace without you. Person in lotus position, wisdom takeaway. Silence is not absence. It is the presence of truth too deep for words. Scorpio's silence doesn't mean they have nothing to say. It means what they feel no longer needs to be spoken, because their decision has already been made. And you'll feel it. In every unanswered message, every blocked call, every door that quietly stays closed. Reason 6. They love deeply, so the pain cuts deeper. You didn't just lose their love. You lost a soul that once chose you above all else. From silence to soul wounds. Why Scorpio's love hurts when it breaks. In part 5, we explored the powerful silence of Scorpio, the stillness that speaks volumes after betrayal. Now, in part 6, we go deeper into why betrayal cuts them so profoundly. It's not just because of the lie, not just because of the loss. It's because when a Scorpio loves, they love with everything. And when you betray that love, you're not just breaking a bond. You're shattering a sacred surrender. This is reason number 6 why you should never betray a Scorpio. Red Heart Fire Reason 6. They love deeply, so the pain cuts deeper. Their love is rare, raw, and relentless, which makes the pain unforgettable. Scorpio doesn't fall in love, they dive in. Other signs flirt with love, test the waters, dip a toe. But Scorpio dives head first into oceans that most people never dare to swim. They don't love lightly. They love fully, body, mind, soul, shadow, and all. When they love you, they remember your routines, study your needs, take on your dreams as if they were their own. They commit fiercely and fearlessly, which means when that love is broken, they don't just lose you, they lose the part of themselves they gave to you. True story, the Scorpio who loved until it hurt. Amir, a Scorpio photographer, fell in love with a woman who had trust issues. He stayed. He listened. He proved, every day, that she could be safe with him. Then she cheated, not out of lust, but out of fear that he was too good to be true. Amir didn't scream. He didn't argue. He didn't even cry in public. But in private, he collapsed. He told me, I didn't just lose her. I lost the version of me that believed love could heal everything. That's Scorpio love. Not just intense, but sacred. Psychology of attachment, the depth of emotional investment. Scorpio tends toward anxious, preoccupied, or fearful avoidant attachment styles, meaning they often love with a blend of intense connection and hidden fear of betrayal. When they trust you enough to open their heart, it's not casual, it's revolutionary, because they don't want to trust easily, but they choose to. And when that trust is shattered, they don't just feel pain, they feel self-betrayal for having believed in you. Astrological reason. Fixed water, unshakable emotion. Scorpio is fixed water, the sign of emotional intensity, loyalty, and permanence. When they love, it's obsessively devoted, spiritually tethered, psychologically fused. So when love is broken, it's not just heartbreak, it's emotional disintegration. They don't just miss you, they mourn the entire emotional reality they built around you, the one they thought would last forever. Why their love hurts more than others? Because they don't offer it often. They don't offer it freely. They give it after layers of walls have been stripped away, after silence becomes trust, after suspicion becomes surrender. And when that love is met with betrayal, they don't just walk away. They shut down entire dimensions of themselves. Some Scorpios never love again. Others do, but never as freely. How this connects to part 5. In part 5, they went silent. But why? Because the pain is too sacred to be shared. Because their love was too deep to be undone by words. Their silence isn't avoidance, it's grief without permission. And grief this deep has no language. Final reflection, reason 6. When you lose a Scorpio's love, you lose a world. They didn't just love you, they became love through you. So when you betray them, you don't just lose their affection, you lose the version of the universe they built around you. And they may move on, they may rebuild, they may even forgive, but they'll never love you the same way again. Person in lotus position, wisdom takeaway. The deeper the well, the darker the echo. Scorpio's love is that deep. So if you ever find yourself lucky enough to receive it, handle it like sacred fire. Because if you betray it, you won't just break their heart, you'll awaken their shadow. And from there, nothing between you will ever be whole again. Reason 7. They don't warn twice. A Scorpio will tell you once. If you don't listen, they'll show you. From deep love to unspoken boundaries. In part 6, we saw how deeply Scorpio loves and why betrayal leaves soul-level wounds. But Scorpio doesn't just sit in pain. They draw lines. And once crossed, those lines are not redrawn, they are erased. This brings us to reason number 7 why you should never betray a Scorpio. Warning reason 7, they don't warn twice. Their first warning is your only one. Scorpio doesn't repeat themselves, they replace you. When a Scorpio expresses discomfort, a boundary, or a truth, they're not looking for a debate. They're offering a final invitation to respect them. Ignore it, mock it, or test it, and you won't get a second chance. Because Scorpio believes this. If I have to repeat myself, I'm not being respected, I'm being tolerated. And Scorpio was not born to be tolerated. True story, the friend who pushed too far. Carlos, a Scorpio musician, had a close friend who constantly joked about his struggles with addiction, masking it as just teasing. Carlos gave him one chance. A calm conversation. A clear line. The next week, the jokes returned, this time in front of others. Carlos walked out mid-gig, blocked his number, removed every trace of the friendship. That friend tried to reconnect for years. Carlos never spoke to him again. His reason? I warned him once. He laughed. Now he understands, too late, why Scorpio's warnings are sacred. When a Scorpio speaks about what bothers them, they're doing something incredibly rare for their nature. They're letting you in. They're giving you power. They're trusting that you'll protect the bond. So when you break that, you're not just crossing a line. You're proving you were never listening to begin with. And Scorpio doesn't waste love or warnings on people who treat their vulnerability like noise. Psychology insight, boundaries versus ultimatums. In emotional intelligence frameworks, healthy boundaries are expressed once, clearly, with calm strength. Scorpio's warning is never dramatic. It's not manipulation. It's truth in its rawest, final form. They say, don't lie to me. If I forgive you once, don't do it again. This is the one thing I won't accept. They don't beg. They don't lecture. They declare. And if you cross it, they don't punish you. They disappear. Astrological energy. Fixed sign equals final decisions. Scorpio is a fixed water sign. Fixed signs are loyal to a fault, patient beyond reason. But once their mind is made up, it's irreversible. If you break a Scorpio's rule, their reaction won't be rage. It will be closure, sudden, permanent, and silent. Not because they stopped caring, but because they realized you never truly did. Corporate example, the one-strike rule. Dana, a Scorpio business owner, hired a promising assistant. She said clearly, confidentiality is my #1 value. Break it, and it's over. 2 weeks in, she caught the assistant gossiping about a private negotiation. No yelling, no confrontation, just a termination letter with 5 words. I already told you once. Scorpio isn't harsh. They're honest. And their time, like their heart, isn't given twice to the same betrayal. How this connects to part 6. In part 6, Scorpio gave you everything. Their love, their trust, their depth. In part 7, they give you one thing more. A warning. That warning is not anger. It's a final lifeline. Ignore it, and you lose not just their presence, but their protection, their passion, and their possibility. Why this makes them so dangerous to betray? Because Scorpio won't argue. They won't convince you. They'll simply remove you from their time, from their heart, and from their future. And the worst part? They won't explain it to anyone. Because real boundaries don't need announcements. They're felt. Final reflection, reason 7. When a Scorpio is done, they're gone. You thought it was just a joke. They thought it was the final straw. With Scorpio, you may never know which moment sealed your fate. Because they don't always slam the door. Sometimes, they close it softly and lock it forever. Person in lotus position, wisdom takeaway. The strongest words are the ones said only once. Scorpio only needs to speak once. After that, their actions speak volumes. And by the time you realize it was your last warning, you'll be standing in the silence, wondering why the door that once welcomed you no longer exists. Reason 8. Their loyalty turns deadly when broken. A Scorpio's loyalty is eternal until it isn't. And when it breaks everything. From final warnings to sacred vows. In part 7, we saw how Scorpio warns you once. And if that line is crossed, there is no turning back. But why is that line so sharp? Why does their reaction to betrayal seem extreme? Because Scorpio isn't just loyal. They are spiritually bound to the people they choose. And when that sacred vow is broken, what replaces it isn't bitterness. It's a cold, unstoppable withdrawal, as if the Scorpio you knew simply died. This brings us to reason number 8 why you should never betray a Scorpio. Scorpion reason 8. Their loyalty turns deadly when broken. They were willing to fight for you, but now they'll never fight for you again. The Scorpio code: loyalty is life. To Scorpio, loyalty isn't optional. It isn't casual. It isn't something you try. It's a code. Once you're in their circle, as a friend, a lover, a partner, you're under their protection, part of their inner sanctuary. They'll defend you in rooms you're not in, stand beside you even when you're wrong, fight for your dreams harder than you do. But once you break that code, once you prove that you wouldn't do the same for them, it's not just the bond that dies. It's their version of you. Real story: loyalty lost. Mila, a Scorpio event planner, had a best friend who was like a sister to her. They supported each other through divorce, career changes, everything. But when Mila confided in her about a major business opportunity, asking for secrecy, that friend accidentally leaked the information to a competitor. The opportunity vanished. Mila didn't scream. She didn't block her. She simply stopped speaking. Forever. When asked why, Mila said, "She was family. But now she's just a name in a story I won't tell again." Why Scorpio loyalty is so intense? Because Scorpio doesn't love halfway. They don't commit lightly. They don't trust easily. So when they do, they're all in. Loyalty, to them, is spiritual currency. And betrayal? It's not just a withdrawal. It's emotional bankruptcy. They don't give you a second chance because you didn't just make a mistake. You shattered a belief system. And beliefs don't mend with apologies. Psychological layer: the burn of betrayed loyalty. Scorpio's loyalty is fused with identity and safety. When someone betrays that, especially someone close, Scorpio doesn't just lose trust. They question their own judgment, their ability to protect themselves. And that's why the reaction is so cold. Because they don't just need to cut you off. They need to cut off the version of themselves that trusted you. Astrological energy: Pluto's elimination power. Pluto, Scorpio's ruler, is about death, elimination, and permanent endings. Scorpio's loyalty is ruled by all or nothing. So when it's broken, they don't scale back. They scorch the earth. Not because they're dramatic, but because they were that devoted. And now, they must bury it, along with everything attached to you. Corporate example: the partner who crossed the line. Arun, a Scorpio investor, co-owned a startup with a longtime colleague. That colleague took a side deal without telling him. The fallout was immediate. Arun pulled his capital, contacted every mutual partner, blacklisted the colleagues silently. No legal battle, no drama, just disconnection. Months later, the colleague said, "I wish we could fix it." Arun replied, "You killed the bond. Why do you think the corpse will speak?" Connection to Part 7. In Part 7, we saw the warning. In Part 8, we see what happens when that warning is ignored. You don't get fire. You get ice. You get silence, distance, and deletion. Because Scorpio's loyalty is not based on comfort. It's based on sacred alignment. Once broken, it cannot be reformed. Not with time. Not with tears. Why their broken loyalty is so devastating? Because you'll feel it in waves. The way they stop defending you. The absence of their protection. The realization that someone once willing to die for you now won't even say your name. And you won't know which moment broke it. Because Scorpio doesn't make speeches. They make decisions. Final reflection, reason 8. Sacred loyalty has sacred consequences. Scorpio loyalty is earned once and lost forever. So if you find yourself inside the circle of a Scorpio's trust, protect it with your life. Because if you break it, you don't just lose a friend. You lose a guardian, an ally, and a soul who would have fought armies for you. And nothing you say can bring that version of them back. Person in lotus position, wisdom takeaway. Those who are most loyal are also most dangerous when loyalty turns to memory. Scorpio doesn't leave like others. They disappear as if they were never there, and leave a void so quiet, it echoes forever. Reason 9. They attract karma like a magnet. Scorpios don't chase revenge. They attract karma and let the universe answer for them. From loyalty to cosmic justice. In Part 8, we saw how Scorpio's loyalty is sacred and when it's broken, it's buried permanently. But here's what most people don't realize. Scorpio doesn't need to retaliate. They don't need to ruin your name, your reputation, your chances. Because the universe does it for them. They have a strange relationship with karma. It doesn't just follow them. It works through them. And that leads us to reason number 9, why you should never betray a Scorpio. Magnet reason 9. They attract karma like a magnet. You might hurt them today, but their silence will echo in your downfall. The Scorpio karma link. There's something uncanny about Scorpios. People who hurt them often experience sudden misfortune, public exposure, emotional or financial collapse. And it's not because Scorpio hexed them. It's because truth has a timeline. And with Scorpio, that timeline is accelerated. You can lie, cheat, steal, or disappear. But somehow, life circles back. And Scorpio doesn't even have to lift a finger. Real story, the ex who got exposed. Jules, a Scorpio in Paris, had a partner who was secretly cheating with a coworker. She found out. Did she confront him? No. She simply said, "I know," and walked away. 2 months later, that partner was fired, exposed for inappropriate messages within the company. Jules didn't tell anyone. Didn't need to. She just said, "Karma was in the room. I was just the mirror." Astrological insight, Pluto and spiritual recompense. Pluto, Scorpio's ruler, isn't just about death and rebirth. It's also about hidden justice. Pluto governs what's buried and what must rise. With Scorpio, that means hidden truths are revealed. Secrets surface. The energy you send them returns tenfold. Because Scorpio is often the catalyst through which karma expresses itself. Why they don't interfere. You'll rarely see a Scorpio getting even. Why? Because they don't need to waste energy. They know. Truth always surfaces. Energy always balances. You will answer, even if not to them. And so they step back. They let the storm hit you without ever speaking your name again. That's not weakness. That's faith in justice deeper than ego. Psychological insight, the power of detachment. In trauma psychology, those who have processed betrayal healthily learn to release control of outcomes. Scorpio, despite their depth of pain, often masters this. They stop controlling. They stop engaging. And ironically, that release invites karma in faster than any revenge plan ever could. Because they're not tangled in your story anymore. They've moved out of the energy field and left you alone with your consequences. Corporate story, the silent collapse. Lorenzo, a Scorpio executive, was pushed out of a deal by a greedy partner. He said nothing, didn't sue, didn't email. But over the next year, the partner lost 2 clients. The deal soured. Reputation tanked. Meanwhile, Lorenzo founded a new firm and brought all the lost clients with him. His ex-partner tried to reconnect. Lorenzo said, "You didn't lose me. You lost protection from what was always coming." Connection to Part 8. In Part 8, Scorpio's loyalty was broken. In Part 9, the universe steps in, and Scorpio lets it. Because Scorpio understands. Not everything needs closure. Not every wrong needs righting. Some lessons must be taught by life itself. They walk away and watch the ground you stood on sink without them. Why this makes Scorpio dangerous to betray? Because you'll think you got away with it. You'll think, they didn't react. They moved on. It's over. But it's not. Because the silence that follows a Scorpio's goodbye isn't empty. It's full of karma. Final reflection, reason 9. Their absence is the beginning of consequence. They don't curse you, but life will, for what you did to someone that pure, that loyal, that silent. Scorpio doesn't hold grudges. They hold mirrors. And the longer you avoid your reflection, the more your world begins to crumble under the weight of what you never admitted. Person in lotus position, wisdom takeaway. Karma doesn't need witnesses. It only needs time. Scorpio is patient, and the universe is exact. So when you hurt them and they say nothing, don't celebrate. Brace yourself, because their silence isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of yours. Reason 10. Their intuition catches you before you betray. Before you even act, they feel the shift. Scorpio senses what hasn't happened yet. From karma to clairvoyance. In Part 9, we saw how karma works through Scorpio, silently, inevitably, and without their interference. But what if I told you they often sense betrayal long before it happens? Not because they're paranoid, not because they're insecure, but because Scorpio's intuition is so sharp. They catch you at the level of intention. And that brings us to reason number 10, why you should never betray a Scorpio. Crystal ball reason 10. Their intuition catches you before you betray. They don't need evidence. They already feel the truth pulsing beneath your smile. The Scorpio's sixth sense. Scorpio doesn't just observe. They absorb. They feel the hesitation in your hug, the sudden delay in your replies, the energetic disturbance in a room you just walked into. They don't guess. They know. Long before you lie, cheat, or walk away. They've already felt the spiritual tremor. And while you're plotting the betrayal, they're preparing the exit. True story. The night everything shifted. Chantal, a Scorpio architect, had been in a stable relationship for over 5 years. Everything was fine, or so it seemed. One evening, mid-dinner, her partner smiled at her, and something inside her flinched. Nothing had changed, not on the surface. But she said, his energy felt elsewhere, like part of him had already left me. 2 weeks later, she discovered an emotional affair, still innocent, technically, but she'd already mourned it. Scorpio feels betrayal when it's still in seed form. And once they feel it, they're already grieving the person you're about to become. Why their intuition is so powerful. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, the planet of hidden things. And unlike most signs, Scorpio doesn't fear the dark. They live in it. They swim in shadow, mystery, silence. They spend years mastering the language of the unseen. So when a Scorpio looks at you, you're not just being seen. You're being read at every level. What you hide, they sense. What you deny, they download. What you suppress, they summon. Scientific layer, subconscious pattern recognition. Psychologists have discovered that people with high emotional intelligence often unconsciously detect micropatterns. Slight behavior shifts, eye contact inconsistencies, tonal mismatches. Scorpio ranks among the highest zodiac signs in this area. They don't always know why they know, but their gut feelings are rarely wrong. And if a Scorpio starts pulling away from you without warning, chances are they already know. Corporate example, the gut call that saved a company. Omar, a Scorpio CEO, suddenly paused a merger deal, no clear reason. He said something fell off during negotiations. His board pushed back. Investors were furious. 2 weeks later, the partner company was exposed for financial fraud. Had the merger gone through, the scandal would have destroyed everything. When asked what tipped him off, Omar said, their words were right. Their frequency wasn't. That's Scorpio intuition. It doesn't ask for permission. It just speaks. Connection to Part 9. In Part 9, we learn that Scorpio doesn't chase karma. But in Part 10, we discover something even deeper. They don't even need karma if they catch you first. Because long before you act, Scorpio is already watching the ripple before the wave. Why this makes Scorpio dangerous to betray? Because you can't hide. You can't outmaneuver. You can't fake your energy. Scorpio doesn't need proof. They trust their instincts, and they're almost always right. By the time you betray them, they've already closed the door in their heart, and they're just waiting to confirm what they already knew. Final reflection, reason 10. Their spirit senses what eyes cannot see. You thought you were clever, but their soul was already packing up to leave. Scorpio's intuition is their greatest weapon. It's also their greatest wound, because they don't just sense betrayal. They feel it coming from the people they still love. And nothing hurts more than that. Person in lotus position, wisdom takeaway. When you live close to the soul, truth doesn't knock. It flows. Scorpio's gift is perception. And that gift is why they rarely fall twice for the same person. Because once their soul feels the shift, no apology, no story, no excuse can reverse it. They walk away with knowledge, not rage. And they never look back. Reason 11. They isolate to heal and plot. When a Scorpio disappears, they're not avoiding the pain. They're mastering it. From intuition to isolation. In Part 10, we discovered how Scorpio often senses betrayal before it even happens. An emotional radar so sharp, they feel the lie forming in your heart. But what happens after? After the silence? After the confirmation? After the cut? Scorpio vanishes. They go quiet, not for drama, but for transformation. And that brings us to reason number 11, why you should never betray a Scorpio. Whole reason 11. They isolate to heal and plot. Their absence isn't retreat. It's resurrection in progress. The vanishing Scorpio. They were here. Present. Protective. Passionate. Intense. Then one day gone. No closure. No final speech. No long goodbye. Just absence. And in that absence, Scorpio is rebuilding everything you burned without you. Because when a Scorpio is hurt, they don't seek comfort. They seek control. True story, the island phase. Ravi, a Scorpio financial analyst, found out his girlfriend had been emotionally cheating for months. He said nothing. He just left. He took a leave of absence, booked a cabin in northern Canada, shut off his phone. For 49 days, he spoke to no one. When he came back, he had started a new company, reorganized his entire finances, filed for a visa to relocate overseas. She tried to reconnect. He simply replied, "I've built a new life in the space where your lies once lived." That's Scorpio. Why they need isolation to heal. Scorpio isn't afraid of pain, but they refuse to bleed in front of people who made them bleed. Their pride is too deep, their soul too private. So they go inward, not to hide, not to sulk, but to dissect the damage and become immune to it. Psychological insight, shadow work, and inner alchemy. Scorpio's healing process mirrors the psychological practice of shadow work, the confrontation of suppressed pain, fear, rage, and abandonment. They don't go to therapy rooms. They become the therapy room. In isolation, they face every betrayal, every weakness, every mistake they made by trusting you, and they turn it into strength. Scorpio's solitude isn't passive. It's surgical. Astrological wisdom, the 8th house rebirth. Scorpio rules the 8th house, associated with death and rebirth, secrets, taboo, hidden transformation. When they isolate, they activate the very core of their cosmic power. You think they're gone? No, they're cocooned. And when they emerge, it won't be to beg you back. It will be to reclaim their crown. Corporate example, the strategic withdrawal. Emily, a Scorpio brand strategist, was double-crossed by a business partner who tried to cut her out of a major licensing deal. She didn't confront him. She vanished from social media, from meetings, from the city. 6 months later, she launched a competing brand, better funded, sharper, and 3 steps ahead. His company folded within a year. When asked what she'd been doing during her disappearance, she said, "I wasn't hiding. I was calculating." Connection to Part 10. In Part 10, Scorpio sensed the betrayal. In Part 11, they retreat, not to weep, but to weaponize. You thought their silence was the end? No, it's the silence before the evolution. Why this makes them dangerous to betray? Because by the time you realize they're gone, they're already 10 moves ahead. They don't react publicly. They restructure privately. They don't destroy you with rage. They destroy your hold over them with reinvention. And once they come back, they're unrecognizable and untouchable. Final reflection, reason 11, the solitude of power. When they disappear, don't look for them. Look within and ask why your presence pushed them into silence. Scorpio isolates not to punish you, but to purify themselves from your energy. And when they return, you'll realize they healed, and you no longer have a place in their new world. Person in lotus position, wisdom takeaway. The cave you fear holds the power you need. Scorpio enters that cave willingly. They confront every fear, every betrayal, every truth, and walk out reborn. If you lost a Scorpio and they went silent, don't assume they're broken. Assume they're rebuilding something you'll never get access to again. Reason 12. Their emotional depth is a double-edged sword. A Scorpio doesn't feel deeply. They feel completely, and that's both their gift and your danger. From isolation to intensity. In Part 11, we explored how Scorpio disappears not to hide, but to heal, transform, and plot their return on their own terms. Now in Part 12, we look at what makes those transformations so powerful and so painful. The answer lies in Scorpio's most defining trait, emotional depth. But here's the truth no one tells you. That depth isn't always a blessing. Sometimes it's a burden. Sometimes it's a blade. And that brings us to reason number 12, why you should never betray a Scorpio. Waterwave, reason 12. Their emotional depth is a double-edged sword. You thought they were too intense. You didn't realize their intensity was how they survived everything you never had to endure. Scorpio feels in dimensions, not degrees. Most people experience emotion like rain. A little drizzle, sometimes a storm, but always temporary. Scorpio feels emotion like an ocean trench. Pressure you can't comprehend. Silence that screams. Depth so intense it feels eternal. When they feel joy, it's overwhelming. When they feel grief, it drowns them. When they love, they fuse. When they're betrayed, they burn. Their emotional range is both their divine power and their greatest vulnerability. Real story, a heart that held too much. A Scorpio man named Elias once said to me, "When she left, I didn't just miss her. I missed who I became around her." And no one tells you how to grieve a version of yourself. She didn't cheat. She just stopped loving him. But to Scorpio, emotional abandonment is worse than betrayal. He went silent for 6 months. Didn't date for 2 years. He told me, "My heart isn't a door. It's a cathedral. When someone leaves, I don't just close it. I rebuild it brick by brick." That's Scorpio depth. Why this depth makes them powerful? Because they don't run from emotion. They run into it. They sit with pain. They interrogate it. They bleed, and then create art with their blood. They're the poets, the prophets, the shadow workers of the zodiac, transforming sorrow into strength and rage into razor-sharp wisdom. But that same depth that makes them powerful makes them dangerous to cross. Because if they feel everything, they also remember everything. And that memory? It becomes the sword you handed them when you hurt them. Psychological insight, emotional overfunctioning. Scorpios often engage in emotional overfunctioning, meaning they carry not only their own feelings, but also yours. They anticipate your reactions, absorb your moods, adjust to your triggers, protect you from yourself, until one day they collapse under the weight. And when they do, they don't just walk away. They explode inward, turning their own depth against themselves before they ever aim it at you, which makes them either the most healing love or the most haunting regret. Astrological root, water plus fixed equals emotional lockbox. Scorpio is fixed water. That means they hold emotions longer than anyone, sink into them more deeply than most, guard them more fiercely than all. That's why betrayal doesn't just hurt them, it changes them. Their depth doesn't bounce back. It breaks and then reforms into a fortress. A Scorpio betrayed by love will still love, but never again from the same depth. They start to protect the cathedral. They build around it, and only a select few ever get back in. Corporate story, the leader who felt too much. Carla, a Scorpio COO, led her team like family. She remembered birthdays, stayed late, protected salaries during budget cuts. When one of her direct reports sabotaged a contract, she didn't fire him immediately. She cried, not out of weakness, but because her emotional investment had been used as a weapon against her. She did fire him, quietly, respectfully. But after that, she stopped attending team events, stopped sending late-night encouragements, stopped giving more than was required. Her team lost not just a boss, but a source of soul. That's the Scorpio cost. Connection to Part 11. In Part 11, Scorpio isolates to recover. In Part 12, we understand why isolation is necessary. Because their emotional depth is so overwhelming, it requires a sacred space to survive it. You may have hurt them in a moment, but their pain will echo across months, even years, because they didn't just feel it in their mind. They felt it in their entire being. Why this makes Scorpio dangerous to betray? Because when you betray someone with shallow feelings, they recover fast. But when you betray someone with depth, they mourn longer. They heal slower, but they change deeper. And when they emerge, they are no longer emotionally available to you or to anyone like you. You didn't just lose their heart. You lost their depth, their softness, their willingness to ever open that far again. Final reflection, reason 12, when feeling becomes fire. You thought they were too much, but one day, you'll miss how deeply they held you, when all you have left are people who barely understand you. Scorpio's emotional depth is not for the faint-hearted. It will heal you, challenge you, consume you, and if you break it, it will never be yours again. Person in lotus position, wisdom takeaway. The deeper the soul, the sharper the silence when it closes. If a Scorpio ever lets you feel their depth, don't treat it as ordinary, because once they withdraw that depth, you'll spend the rest of your life wading in shallow waters, wondering why everything since them feels empty. Reason 13. They come back stronger, colder, smarter. The version of a Scorpio you betrayed will never return. What rises in their place is unstoppable, from depth to detachment. In Part 12, we dove into the terrifying beauty of Scorpio's emotional depth, how it blesses, how it breaks, how it becomes a battleground. But something happens after the breakdown. After the isolation, After the pain has been burned into wisdom, they return, but not the same, not softer, not warmer, not open. They come back stronger, colder, smarter, and this is what you should fear most. It brings us to reason number 13, why you should never betray a Scorpio. Ice Cube reason 13. They come back stronger, colder, smarter. The Scorpio you once hurt is dead. What lives now is your consequence. The Phoenix has no regret. You thought you could explain. You thought they'd understand. You thought, maybe, time would soften them. It didn't. Scorpio isn't soft after betrayal. They're surgical. They don't return to love you again. They return to reclaim their power, the version of themselves you tried to break. And you? You no longer exist in their new world. Not as a lover, not as a friend, not even as a memory worth mourning. Real story, the return nobody expected. Naomi, a Scorpio chef, was dumped by her partner with no warning, no reason, just silence. She fell apart, left the city, stopped cooking. 6 months later, she opened a new restaurant in a bigger market. Better reviews, better team, better life. Her ex showed up uninvited. She looked him in the eyes and said, "You gave me nothing. I used it to become everything." That's the Scorpio comeback. Why they don't return with warmth? Because the Scorpio you once knew was built on trust. You burned that foundation, and now they've built again on caution, clarity, and emotional sovereignty. They're smarter now. They see red flags before the fabric even unfolds. They feel lies before the lips open. And they're colder, not because they hate you, but because they no longer need you. Psychological shift, post-betrayal transformation. In trauma psychology, people either collapse under betrayal or resurrect themselves through it. Scorpio chooses resurrection. Their brain rewires. Empathy gets filtered. Vulnerability becomes earned. Access becomes exclusive. You don't get back in. Not because they're angry, but because they've outgrown the version of them that needed to explain why you're no longer welcome. Astrology, fixed sign, transformed forever. Scorpio is fixed water. Still, deep, unshakable, but once changed, permanently changed. Unlike other signs who cool off, Scorpio rebuilds their inner world with you removed. You're not blocked. You're irrelevant. And there is no heartbreak in their eyes now. Only distance. Corporate story, cold return, hot results. Dane, a Scorpio project manager, was pushed out of a promotion by a colleague's manipulation. He didn't fight. He left the company, got certified, studied market trends, built connections. 2 years later, he returned, not as an employee, as the new investor. The colleague didn't recognize him at first. Dane smiled and said, "You took my ladder. I learned to fly." Connection to part 12. In part 12, Scorpio went inward, shattered and soul-heavy. In part 13, they emerge, not healed the way most understand healing, but rebuilt into steel. They're not looking for revenge. They're living their best life, without the weight of old betrayals, old wounds, or old love. You won't recognize their new glow, because it no longer shines for you. Why this makes them dangerous to betray? Because you didn't just lose their love. You created a better version of them. One that you'll never touch again. They're smarter. They read people instantly. They love selectively. They protect themselves without apology. They're stronger. You can't guilt them anymore. You can't manipulate softness that no longer exists. And they're colder, not because they hate, but because they've learned to be safe in solitude. Final reflection, reason 13, you woke the warrior. The Scorpio you betrayed was your opportunity. The one who came back is your consequence. They don't seek to hurt you. They simply rise above you. And when you see them soaring, when you see them untouchable, when you see them glowing in a way you once begged them to dim, you'll realize that glow was never for you. Person in lotus position, wisdom takeaway. Sometimes the strongest armor is made from broken promises. Scorpio wears that armor proudly, and they'll never take it off. Not for love, not for regret, not for you. If you loved a Scorpio and lost them, respect the silence. Because what's behind that silence is a power too deep, too cold, and too awake to ever be hurt by you again. Reason 14. When they let you go, there's no return. Scorpio doesn't just walk away. They close the gate, burn the bridge, and salt the earth behind them. From rebirth to release. In part 13, we saw the powerful rebirth of Scorpio, stronger, colder, wiser, and absolutely untouchable. But what happens after the rebirth? After they've transformed? After they've outgrown you, healed beyond recognition, and risen from the ashes? They let you go. Not temporarily, not conditionally, permanently. And that's what most people never see coming. So here we are, at the final revelation. Reason number 14, why you should never betray a Scorpio. Door reason 14. When they let you go, there's no return. A Scorpio's goodbye isn't a door left ajar. It's a wall built in silence. Their exit is the end. Other signs leave with a little hope. A maybe. A loophole. But Scorpio? When they're done, they're done. No half-open conversations. No nostalgia-laced apologies. No, let's talk when you're ready. They remove you from their calendar, their contact list, their dreams, their energetic field. You don't just lose access. You vanish from their emotional map. Real story, the quiet goodbye. Leighton, a Scorpio therapist, discovered her best friend had lied about something that cost her a major opportunity. She didn't scream. She didn't accuse. She just said, "I needed you to show me who you really were. Thank you." That was the last thing she ever said to her. No blocks, no drama, just permanent erasure. 3 years later, the friend emailed, apologizing. She never opened the message. Why? Because Scorpio doesn't pause endings. They preserve them. Why Scorpio letting go is so absolute? Because they don't leave until they've tried everything. They fight for you longer than they should. They love you harder than you deserved. They forgive you silently before ever confronting you. So when they finally say goodbye, it means they've grieved you, buried the dream, accepted the death, and now they walk away, not with bitterness, but with freedom. The Scorpio paradox. They care deeply until they don't. You won't hear a final scream. You won't see a final tear. You'll just notice. The warmth is gone. The depth is gone. The you in their story is gone. Because when Scorpio releases you, they release the version of themselves that ever needed you. Astrological perspective. The end is sacred. Pluto, their ruler, is the god of the underworld. Scorpio knows better than anyone that true endings are necessary for new life. They don't hold on to ghosts. They don't invite back poison. They let you die in their timeline, so they can live without distortion. Psychological insight, closure without contact. Scorpios are masters of internal closure. They don't need your apology. They don't need to see you grovel. They don't need mutual understanding. They close the book, because the story no longer serves their evolution, and they never reread chapters they've outgrown. Corporate example, the unopened offer. Kai, a Scorpio founder, was offered a lucrative deal by a former partner who once tried to sabotage him. The proposal was perfect. Big money, big reach. Kai declined, without reading the full offer. He told me, "You can't buy your way back into a place I already healed from." Connection to the journey. Let's reflect. In part 1, Scorpio remembered. In part 2, they transformed. In part 3, they didn't retaliate, they calculated. In part 4, they read between the lines. In part 5, their silence spoke volumes. In part 6, their love cut deep. In part 7, they warned once. In part 8, loyalty turned lethal. In part 9, karma caught up. In part 10, their intuition knew before you acted. In part 11, they isolated to heal and scheme. In part 12, their depth became both gift and sword. In part 13, they returned powerful beyond imagination. And now, in part 14, they release. Not with hate, not with heat, but with holy indifference. Why this makes them impossible to replace? Because you'll realize too late. You weren't just loved. You were chosen. You were protected. You were held in a sacred place. And now, you are nothing but emptiness where fire used to live. Final reflection, reason 14. Release is their liberation. A Scorpio's goodbye is not a beginning of space between you. It's the creation of a universe without you. And in that new universe, they don't speak of you. They don't dream of you. They don't need you. Because you were a chapter. They are the author. Person in lotus position, wisdom takeaway. When Scorpio walks away, it's not to punish you. It's to protect who they're becoming. And that person is wiser, fiercer, free. And you? You're simply a name etched in stone. On a road Scorpio no longer walks. Directed call to action, spoken from the heart. If this video stirred something in you, if you recognized yourself in these words, or you simply admire the unstoppable force of Scorpio energy, then let's keep going deeper together. Glowing Star, subscribe to this channel, The Path to Buddhist Wisdom. Because here, we don't just talk about astrology. We awaken ancient truths. We merge mysticism with mastery. And we honor every soul's path to greatness. Hit that bell. Leave a comment. And remember, the most powerful journey is the one within.